Welcome, everyone. This is Matthew McKenzie here, care activist, and this is one of the first videos that I'll be doing, interviewing fellow care activists and those who are doing the best they can to reach other carers out in the field. So we've got a treat today. We've got Veronica. She's been in the field in regards to caring, training carers and carers awareness and attending special events regarding carers. But I won't go on about what Veronica does. I'm going to leave that for herself. But what I will do is I ask questions. And anyway, the point of these videos is just to raise awareness on what care activists do and carers who go the extra mile to engage and reach other carers. So, Veronica, do you want to tell us a bit about yourself?
Well, hello, Matthew, and thank you for that introduction. Yes, my name is Veronica Kamerling, and I've got three children. I had three children who a son and two daughters, and both my daughters had an eating disorder. One had anorexia, and the other had bulimia, binge eating. And I looked after them until they were in recovery. And I also had a brother who had schizophrenia, and I looked after him. And I also looked after my late husband who had colonic cancer. And the reason that I bring him into it is because the marked difference of looking after somebody with a mental health illness and a sort of physical illness is quite substantial. And I think sometimes carers find it difficult to sometimes perhaps make the switches that are needed just that are needed for mental health illness. And so that's why I talk about him in this context. And it was after my two daughters got into recovery that I decided to start my own organization, which is Eating Disorders and Carers, which I have now done for 21 years. And so I've sort of covered quite a lot of work in that time. And the initial idea was to support carers. And in that way, I suppose I spend more time with professionals and patients so that I can, really get them supported in the whole system and make it more collaborative. And that's really so my message, I suppose, really is to professionals and patients that carers do an amazing job and are part of the whole triangle of care, if you like, which is really, and as I think most people know now, that collaborative caring and the research done on that has shown that brings better recovery outcomes.
Brilliant. Sorry to interrupt you there because you mentioned triangle of care. So for those who just don't know what it is, can you just sort of briefly describe just for 20 seconds? I know that's quite a chore, but I mean, there's probably those out there that might not know what it is. I'm sure I'll put a little reference in the video description, but do you want to describe just a bit about that?
Yes, the Triangle of Care, I've been a member of the Triangle of Care for about 13, 14 years, which was more or less when it was first introduced. And it was a gift to carers because it was a triangle with the professional at the top and the carer and the patient at the bottom of the triangle. And it was was a collaboratively, the collaborative care outlook. And it produced 6 standards to which the services had to adhere to, and then you join it. The Triangle of Care is run by Carers Trust, and they have you join as a member of that, and it's the 6 standards was really the gift, so that you could go with the book, the Triangle of Care book, and say, look, these are the 6 standards that we're expecting services to do. And services did really have to adhere to that. And it has made an enormous difference to how carers are viewed, how they're supported. And as I say, I think it has eased the sort of tensions between carers and staff.
Brilliant. Yeah. Well, what I'll do, I'll certainly put a little reference in the video description for those who are interested to learn more about Triangle Care. Obviously, Carers Trust is a national carers charity, and with triangular care, the focus is on those caring for someone with mental illness. As you can see, um, each challenge a carer can face is different, compared to caring for someone with a broken leg. It's not going to be the same as caring for someone with a specific mental illness, as you mentioned with eating disorders. So you mentioned a bit about support for carers. So what support do you actually provide carers, if you can sort of briefly just describe the support you can?
Uh, yes. Well, when I first started, I ran my own carers group, which I
Mm,
ran for those with eating disorders, and I ran it in London once a month for 2 hours, and I did that for 14 years. And actually, that is part of the sort of the it. If you are a carer, that is a good start to go to a carers group. They give you enormous support, and that's what I hope my carers group does. But it's not just my carers group; that all carers groups offer support, and you find so many people that you can relate to, that you can learn from. Really, really important.
mm,
And then I do training in the form of counselling. Actually, now I do counselling, and then what I used to do is training uh, with sort of slides in codependency and active listening are the two trainings that I do, and
mm,
I sort of add that on to my counseling sessions. So we do counseling on codependency and active listening, and then people get some of the slides so that they can practice, and then perhaps they can come back to me and talk about that. I think that is important, and I enjoy doing that. And I do I give out sort of information, but which is absolutely vital. But basically, my support, as I've alluded to earlier, really comes from being around the professionals and the patients and beating the drum for carers and supporting them and making continuously the that they need the support. They need to be seen not as sort of agitators or a hindrance. And so I suppose that's now more of what I do. And to that effect, I sit on carers councils, again, the triangle of care. I sit on the national group, and I do a variety of jobs throughout for a whole lot of trusts. I also go around doing reviews for eating disorder services around the country on behalf of the Royal College of Psychiatrists, so I can see how the services are performing. And again, being the carer representative, I try and um, perhaps suggest that they do what you know things that would make it easier for carers.
excellent. You do an awful lot, and 20 years, is such a long time in regards to make such a tremendous impact for carers. Obviously, providing support for carers does come with challenges. So I'd like to sort of hear what challenges you've had over the years in regards to going the extra mile and engaging with carers and professionals.
Well, one of the challenges I have is to try and tell those people who are families who actually think that they have someone with an eating disorder that they need to act quickly. It's not. I know a lot of people feel that they can possibly do it, look after themselves, and I'm sure they can. But that early intervention is absolutely critical. The other challenge I have is about the small changes that carers may have to make, which is what again I alluded to about the physical and the mental differences. And for myself, I had to change. It wasn't my personality, but there were things that fitted care that was more uh, um, was just better for those who had a mental health illness, and so that we were all sort of singing from the same song sheet. And in fact, I mean, to put it from my own experiences, that I had a very codependent relationship with my daughter, and I had to change that approach. And so instead of sort of telling her what to do, I had to let her take her organize her own life and take responsibility for her actions. And I'm not saying that everybody's codependent. I was, that's personal experiences. But sometimes there are sort of little changes that make all the difference to the life of someone who's not well. And one of those changes is active listening, which is about hearing what your loved one is saying, and picking up on the sort of feelings that they're trying to verbalize. And I cannot actually emphasize that point too strongly.
Mm.
And all those things are very new to carers. So it's difficult in the early stages to sort of really fully understand what is needed. But those those are some of the things which I think are challenges.
Brilliant. And hopefully those watching will take note of those challenges, because if they want to sort of become activists and pioneers in regards to engaging with services, it's not an easy thing to do. Then I'm sure they can learn a lot from this video. So we have two more questions here, and I'm sure those who are watching are interested in what you got next in store in regards to, what are the future projects you plan to work on, perhaps aimed at carers.
Well, the one, of course, that I'm on at the moment, I was given a great opportunity to do some training on something called open dialogue,
Mm.
which is a sort of it's a holistic person-centered model of care, which started in Finland but has been taken up by a lot of countries around the world now. And without going into too much detail, which about it, it's basically it's very inclusive, non-hierarchical approach to care, and its big strength is that the patient is offered or is asked rather who they would like to come to a meeting with them, and that can be their friends, that can be their families. So they all come together to a meeting along with the practitioners, who are sort of clinicians or carers, and you all sit in a room together. You all are very open about what you're talking about. You're listening and sort of asking appropriate questions. And then, which is different from most models, is that the practitioners then talk about themselves, about what they feel they've heard in front of the patient and their family or their friends, so that it's completely transparent about what is going on. And this is starting to be introduced more and more in this country. And I'm very much involved. I've been really lucky to have been involved in this. And on the other thing which I'm doing a lot of now is confidentiality workshops, which, when we come back to the triangle of care, is one of the features about the triangle of care which still gives rise to quite a lot of angst. So I'm doing that with the carer leads and carer champions, trying to make them see how, sort of, well, not make them see, that sound, but to sort of try and get them to understand sort of how to approach carers and
Mm.
confidentiality. So you take the sort of angst out of it. And I'm also doing, which is very interesting, a quality improvement project on patient flow in a ward, female ward, to see talk about how many people go through the ward, how long they stay, how many are readmitted, and that's actually absolutely fascinating project. I'm really enjoying that, and it's taught me an enormous amount. And my great passion, it hasn't, one of my passions which I haven't realized yet, but there's still time, and that is that I am absolutely love halfway houses, and I've always longed to start a halfway house. So maybe by the time we make another video, Matthew,
Yeah,
we'll have the first bricks in place. That's always been a great ambition of mine.
excellent. Yeah, and yeah, I fully support that. There should be um a process where if a patient has been admitted, that there should be gently you know taken and back into the community. They shouldn't be just thrown back in there. There should be sort of interventions of that kind. And the last question really is, I'm sure because you've been in the game, close to 20, over 20 years, I'm sure you've picked up lots of wisdom and, let's test a bit of that wisdom. Carers, I'm sure looking and professionals as well, sort of wanting to know, what advice would you want to offer to those caring for someone with an eating disorder or perhaps broadly a mental illness?
Well, I'm going to repeat that I think that you act quickly on if you have suspicions that the, your loved one has an eating disorder. Uh, Recovery is an option, and I really am a good example of having had two daughters with an eating disorder who are in now really good recovery. They're married, they have children, they have good jobs, and as a family, we get on really, really well. So this is achievable, and is, I think, one of the most important things to keep in mind. The other thing that I hear a lot, and it just is not right, is that carers blame themselves. Please do not blame yourself. It is not your fault. And I think that's a really important lesson. It's just how it is, and as I say, recover out of all this. Recovery is an option. Um, I personally, if I'm faced with something like that, I go and I involve myself in whatever is going on within whatever the illness is. So in this case, eating disorder. So I find out as much information as you can, go to as many carer groups, as many training sessions that there are open to carers training. It's all enormous value and will help, really help, and also it will help your loved one to know that you are doing those things. It's really, really important. The other thing which I think is vital, not always easy, is to remain on good terms with your loved one, because it comes back to this collaborative care, which is really important. And as I've said before, I think one of the biggest gifts you can give is to listen, listen to hear. So active listening is absolutely vital. And when they sort of talk about their feelings and pick up on them, really, really important. And I talk about listening as though I'm good at it, but I have learned, I am beginning to learn how this works.
Mm.
And it has some very, very positive outcomes. So if all else is not going well, then you just listen.
Listen, excellent advice. And for those watching, you know, hopefully you're sort of taking that advice because I've been, through the situations of mental health carer, and I can certainly say there are many challenges when you're caring for someone with mental illness. There is no preparation for it, apart from what you're hearing now, these videos, what the professionals tell you on the inpatient wards or out in the community. So I'm hoping that you make use of what was heard today. And I'll be doing more of these, more interviews with others out in the field, specifically carers who are engaging and doing a lot of work to sort of strengthen the activism and the support for carers, whether it be mental health carers or those caring for someone with terminal illness or cancer. If carers go the extra mile, there should be there should be a profile raised on the work that they do. So I'd like to say thanks again for Veronica, and we'll do another one of these shortly, perhaps this month or the next. So I'll see you again soon.
Thank you, Matthew, very much indeed. Much appreciated.